Let us proceed, and I hope I keep the order right. Yes, with Miss Norliza Hashim. Norliza. She is the chief executive of Urbanice Malaysia. Some of you, or several of you, have met her. She was the lead of organizing World Urban Forum 9 in Kuala Lumpur. And then, of course, that grew increasingly in that very strong work of Urbanice Malaysia. It's a center of excellence for on community well-being and urban sustainability, and that's in the Ministry of Housing and Local Government of Malaysia. And so Norliza speaks on many issues on behalf of the ministry, but also in collaboration with many stakeholder groups, communities, mayors, cities, on the programs that she has. And she's also teaching in the Islamic University Malaysia. Norliza, over to you.
Thank you, Bruno. Namaste. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good afternoon. I'm sure everyone is either very tired because there's only 2 of us left. Vincent, I'll try to keep the fire alive, you know. Okay. Because Taufik did a good job, but I don't have a long name like Taufik. So mine is very short. Norliza is my name. Hashim is my father's name. So, okay. I'm actually, I'm a practicing planner myself, and this is my 40th year as a town planner. But what is interesting since the morning, actually, Bruno, is that I realized, you know, so much have progressed in urban planning. Actually, there's a lot, because I think since I was very exposed to planning and listening to how I've actually worked in India, Pakistan, China, but everyone have progressed, you know, far way ahead than where they were when I used to be in those countries. So I think I'm really, really amazed. And I think this is a very good platform for us to really discuss and share the progress that we have made thus far. For Malaysia, we have had our Town and Country Planning Act since 1976. So we are much luckier because we adopted the Town and Country Planning Act that the British had, but we split between local government as well as the planning part. So we have 2 acts, one which is a Local Government Act 1975 and Town and Country Planning Act 1976. But luckily for us, till today, both departments are in the same ministry. So in a way, that has helped us. And in fact, the Town and Country Planning Department in Malaysia is one of the most established departments with a presence in all states in the country. So I think that made the planning or urban planning in Malaysia much easier to follow through. Right. Do I click here or there? The last one? This one? Oh, okay. All right. So, yeah, so we are very fast growing, I would say. And today, more and more people in Malaysia actually live in the urban areas. In total, we have 14 states, but we have almost 300 over towns and urban centers all over the country. So urbanization rate is about 77–78%, and that is projected to be about 84% in 2050. So there was a lot of debate in Malaysia, you know, whether you keep on growing or everyone is saying pull the brakes, but actually it's impossible to pull brakes, right, on growth. So this is where in Malaysia, planning has actually evolved into management. How do we manage growth? How do we manage spatial growth, you know, and manage the issues that goes with urban development? So we have our challenges, even with this kind of numbers. One is we are only about 33 million of population size. 25 million are already living in urban areas. But what we have now is a migration between cities to cities, no longer from rural to urban, but from urban to urban. So people are choosing to live, which is a better city, to live with better job opportunities and better living environment and better livability. So I think a challenge for us in Malaysia is how to create more livable cities as compared to just providing jobs that we used to do in the maybe 2 decades ago. And we are also having shrinking population in our bigger cities like Kuala Lumpur. Household size are not increasing. When I was studying, it used to be a multiplication of 4.5. Now we are almost on average down to 3.8. And in Kuala Lumpur, it's almost like 2.2. The same for Penang, we are also in Johor Bahru, and these are all our major centers. And our aging population is increasing. We are now about almost 8%, and it's going to be 11% in 2040. And mind you, we are not really prepared to have the infrastructure for such an aging society. So I believe that everyone will have their kind of challenges, you know. And of course, one of the major challenges you have when you are building and developing is environmental, as well as much has been checked before the two speakers before me. For Malaysia, it is more of opening of land. We have been very good in township development. We open thousands and thousands of acres of land, but that would mean that more and more forest areas apart from agriculture areas are converted. And on top of that, our tree covers also decreases. So on one hand, we also want to champion environmental sustainability. We also want to champion climate change. But on the other hand, we are also having a lot of development pressure. And this has caused a lot of issues over the last decade. We have more floods, we have more erosion. And in total, till just this year in 2022, last year 2022, we had 104 floods. 71,000 people were displaced. 418 evacuation centers had to be set up, and a total loss of property damage of almost 6.5 billion Malaysian ringgit, about 1.5 US billion ringgit. So these numbers are quite scary, you know, because we are not really, we are always having financial, I think with COVID and with climate change, the crisis just intensify because financial resources are always limited. But Malaysia have always subscribed to sustainable agenda since 1970s. And of course, since all our development blueprints have always pursued the agenda of sustainability, especially when the SDGs were formulated, or even our economic blueprints, our development blueprints actually subscribe to these good practices. So, and what is important, I think, is that we also have a very complete ecosystem to support that. That means to say from institutional framework to policy documentation, as well as the governance system to support the implementation of those policies. Now, in a way, when we talk about urban development and climate change, I think Malaysia, we are quite fortunate because in terms of policy making, we are quite well coordinated over time. I mean, this is a process that we took over 40 years. It's not overnight also, actually. So we've always started with economic plan in the past, and now we are into our 12th Malaysia plan. It is a 5-year economic plan. But our economic plan is just not talking about GDP contribution. It has always talked about social well-being as well. So socio-economic is definitely inside our economic blueprint. That means to say we are looking at income disparity, regional imbalance, you know, and that will always be covered also in our economic blueprint. So when the Town and Country Planning Act was amended back in 2000, we introduced a much more comprehensive development plan system. We only used to have 2-tier, which is to prepare a plan at a state level or provincial level and at a local level. But in 2000, we introduced 2 other tiers, which is a national physical plan, which is at the national level, and also a special area plan, which is a more management plan after the local plan at the municipal level. So this 4-tier of development plan system is actually translating all the national policies, be it economic policies or any form of policies that might affect spatial growth and development. But they are not just documents, they have regulators and they have overseeing councils. For example, at the National Physical Plan, it is overseen by our National Physical Planning Council, which our Prime Minister chair. And all the 14 heads of states sits in that committee with a head of planning from each state. And major projects have to go through the National Physical Plan Council. We include infrastructure projects as well as projects which might affect environment. Also, projects which have very large population also must go through the National Physical Planning Council. Of late, even projects which are detrimental to climate change also have been sent to this committee. Of course, at the state level, which is the state structure plan, it is regulated by the state chief minister, which he heads the State Planning Council, a very strong committee that approves almost everything. Now, the conflict with us in Malaysia is land is a state matter. That is our biggest conflict comparatively to maybe China or anywhere. That means to say, even though the national government says no, state government has a possibility of still saying yes, because land is a state matter. And of course, at the district level or at the municipal level, we have our local plan and we also have special area plan. So I think this is our development plan system, which is actually quite relatable to the first session. But I also wanted to bring how we actually merge the climate change and environmental policies. Because in our Town and Country Planning Act, it is very clear, social, economic, and physical policies must be reviewed as part of documenting our development plan. So these policies, which is quite a long list, and actually even more so, because this is just a national policies, we also need to see state policies, and we need to infuse this into our development plan. So in a way, our development plan, which is the lowest hierarchy, the local plan, they are used for development control. So the law says that you cannot get your plan or building approved if it contradicts with the local plan. So the regulatory system in a way falls in place. So we have a system of amending and changing that accordingly. Now at the 12 Malaysia plan, it is also very interesting because climate, environmental sustainability has always been an agenda. So because as you see, like I mentioned, every 5 years we review our economic plan, but the review needs to review also of our progress. So the ones on the right-hand side, that was actually in the 11th Malaysia plan to see where we are. The targets are set and where we are. So in some areas, we progress. I actually only took the one which is relatable to environment. So for example, this is about contributing climate change. You can see the gaps that between the different kind of targets that we have set. So this helps us in terms of setting the tone besides current issues in our 12 Malaysia plan. So in the 12 Malaysia plan, advancing sustainability is one of the main themes that has been brought into the equation. And of course, the SDGs are actually all over mentioned. I think I showed just now in this document. This is actually the framework of the 12 Malaysia plan. We have the Sustainable Development Goals, which is embedded into the document. So one of the things that, because I'm just going to be very high level in terms of how we structure our policies. So it's very important for us in Malaysia to have this enabling policy. That is how we operate in the country. So maybe for different governance system, it is different, but for us, we need to have some kind of policy that filter from national to state to local. And I think this is what we have been operating on for a long time. Now for climate change, we actually have also a whole set of policies to support this. And it's not just about climate change policy. It's actually talking into fuel, renewable energy. But most important, we also understand the problem with climate change is in cities. Because of that, we have also introduced a National Low Carbon Cities Master Plan. And we've also come up with a low carbon cities framework where cities must measure their level of emission. So this is, of course, done. It's been in practice for the last 10 years. So it's not yet mandatory because the government still wants it to be voluntary. So because of that, there's a lot of advocacy, there's a lot of training that have to be done. But 55 out of our 155 local government have actually started to report on their carbon emission at the local level. So this is important because at the national level, we have a Climate Change Action Council, again, chaired by our Prime Minister. So it meets more regularly than some councils that we have, sometimes 3 to 4 times. And the latest that have been decided in the last council is to have an adaptation plan. Because I think with the severity of what we are going through in climate change, we have decided that, we have to focus on not only mitigation, but also on adaptation. So this is where we are because Malaysia commits to 45% of carbon reduction by 2030 actually, compared to the 2005 level. Our commitment is based by GDP per capita. And the areas that we said are the highest in terms of avoidance of carbon is forestry, energy, as well as waste. So those are the areas that actually we are looking at. Of course, land use change is something that we are very concerned about. And you can see when we calculate carbon without the land use change versus the one with land use change, it's obvious that with land use change will give you a higher impact. So this is where I think, just like what Taufik was going through, quantitative measurement is always important. Because I think people are getting, like for example, there's a lot of health issues also in Malaysia today, respiratory issues, and a lot of these actually contribute because of urban activities and the quality of air that we are breathing in cities. So I think this is where, like I mentioned, cities are going into more quality environment, and hence such kind of elements are becoming more and more important to us. So our commitment at the COP have become more and more intensified. We started with 35% and now we are about 45%. And I know that it's still a very tall order for us, and we are always questioned all the time. So at the territorial planning, there's a lot of things that also have to be done. And this is covered by our National Physical Plan. So we are into our 4th National Physical Plan. And most of all the physical plans talk about not only the policy with regards to growth, balanced development, but most important is how to manage the spatial growth of the country. So this is where all kinds of model, like just now, which urban areas are more ready, for example, agglomeration of centers, So we've actually grown quite, we've tried a lot of things, we've also moved our corridors quite a lot. But what is important is actually to protect the environment. I think that has remained quite strong over the years. So we have corridors that we want to maintain. And in particular, we look at resource management plan and of course, the natural disaster risk plan. Now, these plans actually doesn't stop here because from all these plans that we come here at the National Physical Plan, we've also developed our National Physical Coastal Zone. Because we realize that at the very high level document, it doesn't help the local council. So very similar to what you did, Taufik, we also come up with a Coastal Vulnerability Index, which measure 3 different elements, which is the physical elements, the biodiversity element, as well as the socio-economic elements. So there are more than 5 million people actually affected in this coastal zone, about 2,000 over villages in 45 of the 155 local government just within the coastal areas. And it shows the different level of vulnerability for the different kind of indexes. So now we call it they have units, just like, climate units, as you were mentioning. So we have all these planning units, and this is actually taken at the local plan level and translated into development control plans. So it helps the local council, because some local councils in Malaysia do not have the financial as well as the technical capacity to do this kind of analysis. So it needs to be assisted at the national level, funded by national level. And this particular study involves almost like 20 different agencies from almost 10 different ministries, which is actually quite an amazing process. I was involved in that project actually. And of course, when we talk about regional territorial planning, it's important to make sure that all the regional plans also translate the national policies. So this is one of our economic corridor in Malaysia. It's called Iskandar Malaysia. It is at the bottom, it is across Singapore. So again, we have 3 pillars there: wealth generation, wealth sharing, but the most important to climate change is resource optimization and low carbon. So again, how do we translate this into strategies? And from strategies, the same area, the same region also develop their low carbon society blueprint, going it further down, because it cannot end at a high level document. So the local government in these areas now, there are 5 local government, they go down to the ground to measure their carbon emission. And then they set their roadmap as to how to overcome that carbon emission level. So we have a grading system in Malaysia, diamonds being the properties of carbon. So we have 1 diamond, 2 diamond, up to 5 diamonds, which we accredited, and they get some perks, the local government. Now, this is the most developed region in Malaysia, where almost 30% of our national population live here. This is the Klang Valley, Kuala Lumpur, PJ, you will land in this area. So again, when we were looking at these areas, I just wanted to reflect that even at the most dense area, you do need to look at territories in a different way, which is what Dr. Shova mentioned just now. Do we limit it to district? Do we limit it to administrative boundary? And I think the word is should be no. This is where when we did this exercise, we established environmental assets of the area that should have a common understanding as to how do we protect these areas, because there's 11 local councils here, 2 states and 8 districts. So after a lot of debate, the decision is to have a joint body that looks into the operations of these matters, which is on environment, on shared infrastructure, as well as shared amenities at the urban areas. Because, you might be living in another district like PJ. I live in PJ, for example, and I work in Kuala Lumpur. On a daily basis, I use all the infrastructure in Kuala Lumpur. On a weekend, yes, I want to use the facilities in Petaling Jaya. So we are seeing that the whole conurbation actually is relatable to one another, yet we don't have the same standards at all. We don't have the same money that is being given and distributed equally as well. So there's a lot of discussion into these joint operation bodies, but with a lot of change in government over the last 3 governments, these joint operation bodies have been a little bit shaky, but the plan is still there. There are committees overseeing it, but we do want it to move on a much more faster momentum. And I think when I was looking at all this, the area which I'm working on now, the current space that I'm working, I'm actually promoting a lot on localization of SDGs, because I also realize that whatever plans that you do at the national level, sometimes it never fits the problem that's on the ground. So when we introduce the SDGs, actually, we realize that climate change and sustainable development, they're actually the same. They're the 2 sides of the same coin, actually. And if you look at it, almost 154 of the 169 targets are aligned to climate actions. So it's impossible for you not to dismiss SDGs actually in the work track that you are doing. So this is where we looked at all these issues on the ground, whether it's floods or urban heat island. COVID really gave us the best data to prove to the government and our people that urban activities are the cause to a lot of urban problems, because our rivers were clean and our air was clean. So we had all the benefits of this data, just like what you did. And thanks to the scientists that were still working, even though it was COVID. So we use all this information actually, because we wanted to make a statement. And that's where we launched the SDG Cities initiative, where we encourage all our 155 local government to actually prepare their SDG roadmap. But the state government of Selangor, they felt that this should not just be the effort of the local government. As a state, they also want to prepare. So this is the first state that is doing a sub-national voluntary report, which we are very happy to assist them. Because I think no matter how advanced, this is our most advanced state in Malaysia, highest GDP contributor, but they still have their problems. They still have their gaps. And the best thing about the SDG process is that you must consult the stakeholders. That's a must. And I think during this process of doing it, whether it is at subnational level or at a city level, we are able to determine local gaps. And we've done almost about 10 cities now. All the cities have different gaps actually. And actually, there is no one solution that fits all. So I think this is the city of Subang Jaya. They've also gone all the way to VLR. And definitely we are seeing that even though climate action is not the purview of local government in Malaysia because we are not autonomous, however, we cannot miss it out. And it's very obvious in all our analysis to see that the role of local government in terms of addressing sustainable cities, sustainable communities, as well as climate action is very, very important. In fact, during COVID, a lot of our city government had to also do SDG 8, which is decent jobs and local economy, which is something that under our laws, our local government is not involved in economic activity. But, this is where we are also looking back how to strengthen our local government, empower them more, look at the fundings that's more appropriate for them. Because if you look at all the issues, it's actually happening at the local level. So that's all that I have to share. But in conclusion, I just want to say that planning is very, very dynamic. It is also very aggressive. I don't think there is something that's very stagnant that should be used as a model of development. So I think what we've heard, any model that is being used, whether it is the most simplistic model or a very comprehensive model, it can always be relatable to whatever situation that we have in the city. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Norliza. It was a typical Norliza presentation. She uses, fitting for the topic of the afternoon, she uses an avalanche technique. It starts very slowly, you hear something, there is a law of 1970s or 60s in Malaysia, and there is that, and then it starts and it comes and more and more and more comes. And it's always impressive. But the key issue that I also take away from this, if you look into the background, Norliza is working in the Ministry of Housing and Local Government, and I don't think Norliza is the most powerful ministry. No, we agree, yeah. So in order to deal with these issues, you don't need always to be in the most powerful ministry. You do not sit next to the Prime Minister, yeah. And so in all these mandate issues, life is never perfect. The local context is never perfect. But it shows in the Malaysian context that throughout the years, a committed group of professionals crafted out an institutional space within the Ministry of Housing and Local Government, which I think every 3 years changes in name as well, to stand for the thing that really matters, and that is to bring the best professional competence together, but also to do that for the public good of local development, for cities. And it's that passion that talks so much. It's results for local communities, results for cities. And if you need for that as an accordion to go up and down, subnational, national, climate, SDGs, if that is needed to deliver the results, then you do that. But it is that vision to come together with committed professionals and committed stakeholders to seek to craft out that space to come to those results. And I think it showed, again, very well today. Thank you, Norliza.